There has been recent interest in the brain parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. It has made headlines for being a mind-controlling parasite that people get from cats. People were eager to vilify cats as a source of this dangerous parasite. They found it fascinating that a large percentage of the world's population has already been infected with it, including 30 million Americans, and that it can make its victims not only lose their fear of predators, but even be drawn to them. In truth, we may have overestimated our risk of getting it from cats, though. If a cat gets infected, it only sheds the parasite for about 2 weeks, and then usually never sheds it again, and if you are careful to wash your hands thoroughly after cleaning a litter box, you won't get it from your cat. The biggest risk for getting toxoplasma is actually from ingesting contaminated water, soil, meat, or vegetables. Although dogs are not the natural host of T. gondii, they can get it themselves. I have seen conflicting information on whether humans can get toxoplasmosis from a dog. Some sources say no, but others say if the dog has ingested toxoplasma cysts, it could shed them in its feces. Also, if a dog just slurped up some toxoplasma-infected cat feces and then licked you, he could pass it to you. In fact, a dog could give you hookworms, roundworms, giardia, salmonella, or other things, from licking you. If a woman gets infected with toxoplasma for the first time while pregnant, the infection may be passed to her baby. If this does happen, there can be very serious effects on the baby, ranging from vision loss, mental disability, seizures, to death. Despite this, people carry on with cat ownership. Are pregnant women warned about this? I know I wasn't. It seems to be fairly rare that a baby is born with toxoplasmosis, but if I was fully aware of even the possibility of getting it and giving it to my baby, I would not have taken the chance. But, toxoplasma is not the only parasite that can get into the human body and enter our brains. Dogs and cats also have roundworms, called T. canis and T. cati. Even though they are different organisms, when researching, I found that pretty much all of the effects toxoplasma can have on us can also be caused by dog roundworms. This must be because both are parasites that are able to enter our brains, evade detection by our immune system, stay latent most likely forever, and be reactivated later in life when our immunity goes down. They can cause disease in humans long after the human was unknowingly infected. Most of the time, the disease is never connected to the fact that the person had a parasitic infection. Most people are not tested for antibodies to parasites. You don't know if you have one or more parasites in your body. The dog roundworm, Toxocara canis, is more of a health risk to humans than Toxocara cati, simply because of the way dogs behave. Dogs, unlike cats, defecate literally everywhere, right on our walkways, all green spaces, parks and fields, grocery store parking lots and beaches, and now, even inside stores. And, obviously, even if cleaned up, some traces remain. Roundworm eggs persist for years, long after the shit appears to be gone, so most areas in our communities where we walk and play are permanently contaminated with dog roundworm larvae. People bring their dogs everywhere, which they don't do with cats. Dogs also lick people constantly, which cats don't do. Toxocara eggs can persist for years in soil after the shit appears to be gone because they have a very environmentally resistant protective shell that can even survive a cold winter, bleach, or Lysol. It would take a propane torch to kill them. I repeat, it would take a propane torch to kill them. In one study, it was found that 100% of people had fecal matter on their shoes. This is not surprising, since it's literally impossible to walk anywhere today without getting dog shit on your shoes. For these reasons, the dog roundworm, Toxocara canis, is our biggest health threat. According to one source, 14% of us have been exposed to it. This is probably an underestimation, since no one is studying this neglected disease. You don't have to be a dog owner to be exposed, as dogs defecate everywhere in our communities where we walk and play. It was found that many child victims of neurotoxocariasis, which is when toxocara larvae invade the brain and/or spinal cord, did not have a dog at home, or any close contact with dogs in their history. This is chilling. They probably came in contact with this dangerous parasite just from playing at the park, or their own schoolyard, or maybe even in the grocery store, school, or library, which should be dog-free. That's why I'm passionate about getting the horrific practice of open, public defecation by dogs, even if picked up, banned. It's my hope that if dog owners are fully aware of the risks of dog shit, that they will want to stop this practice, to protect the public and also themselves and their own families. So, what can Toxocara canis do to us? If a child or adult accidentally ingests microscopic Toxocara eggs, simply by touching soil or grass, or walking where a dog previously defecated and then touching their shoes, and then face, they can develop toxocariasis. Until fairly recently, it was thought that there were two types: visceral larva migrans, where the larvae travel throughout the body and invade your organs, and ocular larva migrans, where they invade the eye and optic nerve and can cause permanent blindness and eye loss. But, recently, two more forms have been identified: covert toxocariasis, which can cause cough, difficulty sleeping, abdominal pain, headaches and behavioral problems, and neurotoxocariasis, where the larvae invade the brain and spinal cord. These are some of the horrifying things I found while researching. I found that Toxocara-infected mice are less explorative and active, less responsive to novelty, and show lower levels of aversion to predator stimuli in open areas than control, uninfected animals. This is from an article called Cerebral Toxocariasis: Silent Progression to Neurodegenerative Disorders, published in the National Library of Medicine. Everyone has heard of TCONDI controlling our brains, but the media is not publishing the fact that dog roundworms are also making people less fearful of predators. Intuitively, we in the anti-dog community knew something was off. If everyone is getting toxoplasma from cats, and it is controlling their brains, why don't cat people seem to be the ones ignoring danger and going crazy? You don't see cat people laying down their newborn babies with their cats, even though this would not be nearly as risky as laying a newborn down with a dog. But there are hundreds upon hundreds of videos where parents lay their newborns down, offering them as a sacrifice to their deadly predator, scavenger animal, showing no sign whatsoever of parental instinct to protect their child from danger, whether from harmful pathogens, or from being attacked. I have absolutely no idea why these disgraceful child endangerment videos are legal. Why is it that dog people are not afraid of having a dangerous predator that could easily kill them or their children in their home with them? Maybe it's because the real mind-controlling parasite that we need to worry about is Toxocara canis. These worm larvae, once they are accidentally ingested into the human body, can cross the blood-brain barrier into the brain, and cause brain injury. I'm going to say that again, they can cause brain injury. People who tested positive for Toxocara antibodies also had several biomarkers for brain injury. Toxocara roundworm infection can cause meningitis, which is inflammation of the tissues surrounding the brain and spinal cord, which can be fatal within 24 hours, encephalitis, which is inflammation and swelling of the brain, which can lead to mental confusion and seizures, myelitis, which is inflammation of the spinal cord, which can damage the protective myelin sheath, and cerebral vasculitis, which is inflammation of the blood vessels in the brain, which can lead to a loss of neurologic function, behavioral abnormalities, optic neuritis, and space-occupying lesion. An article published in 2021 revealed that mice infected with T. canis had severe gliosis, among other findings, in their brains. Gliosis is a reaction to brain or spinal cord injury. In response to injury, the brain produces more or larger glial cells, one type of brain cell. These extra cells cause scarring. They are not brain tumors, but gliosis and necrosis, which means areas of brain death, which Toxocara canis invasion of the brain can also cause symptoms similar to brain tumors. In addition, although gliosis is not cancer, it can progress to cancer. The horror continues. It was found that if you are immunosuppressed, and have a latent, unknown Toxocara infection in your brain, your larval counts will increase significantly, and you will have significant enhancement of reactive gliosis. The lowered immune response probably causes large numbers of worm larvae to migrate from other organs like the liver to the brain. Even if you are not immunosuppressed, there is a progressive accumulation of larvae in the brain over time if you get infected. This probably explains why most neurodegenerative diseases progressively get worse. Recently, there was a report that Toxoplasma gondii could be a risk factor for glioblastoma, the most aggressive form of brain cancer. The encysted parasite can provoke inflammation, and inhibit natural programmed cell death, which can stimulate cancer to start developing. I would guess that Toxocara canis larvae encysted in the human brain would be capable of doing the same thing. This report isn't receiving much attention. Did you know about it? And the news that dog roundworms can also be a risk factor will surely receive even less. Don't forget, we don't know why people get most of these dread neurodegenerative diseases, but what we do know is that Toxocara roundworm larvae can get into the human brain, and when they do, they cause brain injury. Biomarkers for brain injury were found in mice that received even a very low dose of Toxocara ova. Toxocara canis larvae invasion of the brain has been shown to cause gliosis. Gliosis is not cancer, but it creates the same symptoms as a brain tumor, and it can become cancerous. Toxocara larvae can cause gliosis, structural brain damage, and activated microglia in mice. Since biomarkers associated with brain injury are found in people infected with toxocara, it is clear that it is doing the same thing in our brains. There is lots of evidence that T. canis has the potential to alter the behavior of its host. Toxocariasis, that has invaded the nervous system, can decrease cognitive capacity and cause depression, seizures, encephalitis, brain vasculitis, dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, epilepsy, and extramedullary space-occupying lesions. So far, we have not found a way to cure it, that is, to remove the toxocara larvae from our bodies. Outside of the brain, it has been linked to breast cancer, asthma, and blood cancer. It can also chronically infect the heart and lungs and liver. Nodules that look like ground glass on a CT scan have been found in lungs. This information is out there already, in medical journal articles. I am not making any of this up. Researchers have studied all of this, but no one is really putting it out there to the public. Everyone deems pet keeping to be more important than human health. The first case of neurotoxocariasis was discovered in 1951. They didn't conclude until 1956 that the parasite found in the child's brain at autopsy was in fact T. canis. They discovered that T. canis causes demyelination of nerve fibers, nerves' protective coating. It can infect the cranial nerves, which are located in the back of your brain. Maybe it's even a cause of trigeminal neuralgia, yet another disorder with no clear cause. They also discovered that T. canis has a higher chance of migrating to the central motor system than T. cati does. The term neurotoxocariasis was not introduced until 2007. People have been living among dogs for far longer than we were aware of the many dangers of doing so. The most prevalent symptoms of neurotoxocariasis are deterioration in the motor area, seizures of the epileptic type, and neuropsychological impairments. You can see that we have had those things for many years, and no one would have connected them to toxocara infection. Those things are still not connected to dog roundworm eggs today, since we are ignoring all of this information, not warning the public, not taking this seriously, and putting pet keeping above our own health. In fact, we seem to put pet keeping above all else. Our children's safety doesn't even come a close second to our chosen deity. In one case study, an 18-month-old boy was admitted to the hospital with constant seizures, went comatose, and died 3 days later. It was found that he had T. canis larvae in his brain and other organs. So, getting ripped limb from limb is not the only way a child can die from our insistence that these scavenger animals belong in our communities. Toxocara can cause depressive symptoms, mental confusion, cognitive impairment, schizophrenia, and lower academic achievement. It is very difficult to diagnose, and is most often overlooked and not looked for. Rates of T. canis infection of soil is higher in poor neighborhoods, but it's present in all neighborhoods. It could be that it's exposure to dog worms that is actually marginalizing children in poorer neighborhoods, and preventing them from succeeding. In mouse experiments, T. canis infected mice experienced poor muscle control, muscle weakness, leg paralysis, incoordination, and reduced fear and flight behavior. As bad as it is in our developed countries, toxocara soil infection rates, as well as antibody rates in the population, are much higher in developing countries, because there are so many strays in the community. This could be a major reason for all of the social and learning problems we have, that are worse in developing countries. In most areas of Canada, we don't have a lot of strays running around, but in remote northern Inuit towns we do. In addition to periodically ripping a young child limb from limb, this stray dog population is likely causing a high rate of toxocara canis infection, which in turn causes learning, social and health problems. The dog is a parasite that exists in great numbers wherever humans are found, inoculating us with T. canis larvae to keep us under their control and reduce our natural fear and aversion toward them. I do believe this parasitic relationship is operating on two levels. The parasite is invading and altering our brains, and causing us to be attracted to and take care of the parasite that is giving us parasites. Toxocara canis is a widespread and economically important, neglected zoonotic parasitic infection, that usually goes undiagnosed. Toxocariasis is the most common human parasitic worm infection in the United States. Its global importance is probably greatly underestimated. You would think the government would care about this public health crisis. Instead, dogs are promoted as something that is healthy to be around. All a human has to do is accidentally ingest a microscopic egg by hand-to-mouth contact to become infected. Eggs may be present in playgrounds and sandboxes. After ingestion, released larvae penetrate the intestine and migrate through the liver, lungs, and central nervous system. The victim's immune system may then force the larvae into a state of arrested development, where they lie dormant, but not before they have caused damage. Covert toxocariasis causes features which resemble childhood asthma, including wheezing, and some researchers have shown a link between toxocara infection and asthma. It has also been implicated as a cause of seizures, mental retardation, and developmental delays. Most, if not all, puppies are born with toxocara canis worm infection, and many pets are not correctly and continually dewormed. According to one article, given its proposed links with asthma and developmental delays, human toxocariasis may represent a health disparity of staggering proportions. It has also been found that frequently, people have both T. canis and T. gondii, which might even mean that T. canis is the true culprit. We don't yet have adequate testing available. Ocular toxocariasis is particularly hard to detect, and most doctors are not aware of all forms of it, so it remains a neglected disease. The numbers of people with nervous system infection of T. canis is unknown, and information on its impact on human neuropsychology is sorely lacking. Deworming dogs helps, but it's not a perfect solution, as it does not remove all worms, and if overused, the worms can develop resistance. The solution is that dogs should be kept out of areas where children play, and should not be allowed to defecate in public at all. I know I am in a small minority, but I believe children's, and adults', health is more important than pet ownership. Ocular larva migrans is a leading cause of infectious blindness in children in developed countries. Toxocara canis infection is hard to diagnose since humans are not the definitive hosts. Stool examination for larvae does not work. One article stated that since this disease is rarely considered by doctors, the true disease burden is likely underestimated, and the chronic and economic burden of disease is likely profound. It is considered a neglected infection given the minimal level of research, funding and publicity it receives, despite carrying a significant disease burden. Rates of infection are higher in poorer neighborhoods and poorer countries. That's probably why they are poor and stuck in the cycle. I suspect this is rapidly changing, with the ever-increasing presence of shitting dogs in children's play areas and school yards. Maybe this is what is causing a lot of behavior problems and learning difficulties. We can't wait for someone to do something about this public health emergency. We need to take action now. Open, public defecation by dogs needs to be banned, and since that's pretty much all that dogs do when they are out, their presence needs to be banned in pretty much all areas, like we did with smoking. I can't believe doggery has replaced smoking. If I could choose, and go back to having people smoking in public areas, rather than having dogs shitting and pissing everywhere, I would choose the smoking in a heartbeat. At least it looked cool. So, how do we avoid getting toxocara infection? One source tells you to wash your hands after picking up dog shit, which is not happening when dogs defecate in public when people aren't home, so they pick up feces and then come back into apartment buildings with their feces bag hands, or go into other places such as stores, and even eat without washing their feces bag hands. Here's where it gets really bad. Children are supposed to wash their hands after touching pets and playing outside, and they are not supposed to play near pet poop. Well, since we allow all of our children's play areas, including school grounds, to be used as dog toilets, it is impossible for our children to play in a dog shit-free zone. Because pets will pass feces anywhere, toxocara eggs may contaminate a large area quickly. These worm eggs and larvae can survive for years in parks, playgrounds, and yards. You can get hookworms, another type of roundworm, simply from walking with bare feet, or sitting on the grass, something children should have the right and freedom to do. Dogs should be strictly forbidden from being at beaches, where people might even be with bare feet, or playing in the sand. Children's hands should be washed with soap and water after playing with pets or other animals, after outdoor activities, and before handling food or eating. They should avoid touching soil that may be contaminated with animal feces. Your yard should be kept free of animal feces. You can see that these recommendations are impractical, and many people are not following them, and if you have a dog, it is impossible to keep your yard free from dog feces. Even if you don't have a dog, if you move into a house that had a dog before, the yard will be contaminated with toxocara eggs for years, and probably the inside of the house, too. The answer is that dogs should not be allowed at any area where children will be. The Public Health Agency of Canada states, municipal laws preventing the entry of dogs to parks and playgrounds and the requirement of owners to promptly remove their pets' feces from public areas may considerably lower the chances of toxocara infection. Due to a resistant outer shell, toxocara eggs can withstand many disinfectants, including Lysol, chlorine, and others, and can remain viable for years in soil. Eye disease can occur 4 to 10 years after the initial infection and is difficult to diagnose because antibody levels can be low or absent despite disease being present. Most people, including doctors, would never connect it to dog shit. We don't know the true numbers of children that get ocular toxocariasis. It is recommended to at least carry a bottle of water with you that you can pour over your and your children's hands when you are out, before eating, as hand sanitizer does not kill toxocara eggs. This one I found conflicting information on. Some sources said alcohol does not kill toxocara eggs, and others said 70% ethanol does. Do what you will with the conflicting information. I personally wash my hands 7 times with boiling water if I am even within 50 feet of a dog. They are that vile. Most sources say the eggs have to be physically removed, preferably with a thorough washing with soap and water. There is some evidence that it may even be possible to get toxocara from a dog's coat, and that toxocara eggs can be inhaled. Try not to be in an elevator with a dog, since they love to shake. You know, you don't see other animals shaking all the time. It must be another way they are programmed to spread their pathogens around as much as possible, along with kicking behind themselves after they shit in public, so that humans all get inoculated with T. canis eggs, so they lose their fear and aversion toward them and keep feeding them as if they are their own babies. In keeping with the brood parasite theory, dogs are dependent on humans for survival. Every single thing they do is geared toward getting food from human beings. Researchers in Turkey concluded that public parks and playgrounds should be fenced to prevent fecal contamination. In other words, dogs should not even be allowed at parks and playgrounds, at least not if you want them to be safe for human children to play in. I'm not even talking about the potential for attacks here, although that is always present. We need to fight to bring back the rights of children to play freely in clean, safe areas. This needs to be prioritized over pet keeping. At this point, I would like to thank you for listening to all of this information in this, and the previous videos, and I would like to apologize if at times it was a bit disjointed, tedious, or repetitive. As I was researching this, I came across article after article, more and more horrifying information, seemingly endless, about this little-known parasite, and how it's affecting us globally, and I wanted to include as much of it as possible. We need to be armed with as much information as possible to fight this war. All of the information I have shared came from scientific sources. I did not just make any of it up, including the recommendations to keep dogs away from parks and anywhere children play. I know it was a large amount of information to take in. Thank you for listening. I am sure you are as shocked and dismayed as I am that there are very real dangers to having dog feces everywhere, especially to our children, and seemingly no one is doing anything about it. We have to fight this.